Yes, g'day guys, welcome back. You're watching the 7 Tackle Set NRL SuperCoach podcast. It is buy, hold and sell time, and what a week to do it. Round 4, absolute chaos. It feels like round 26 Matrix when all of the teams that are ahead and can't really improve their ladder position just sit all of their stars. Obviously not to that degree, but it's, genuine chaos this week. I'm interested to see how we all navigate it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not about sitting all your stars. It's all about them hitting people in the head and getting sat. So yeah, I tell you what, I don't know, like outside of like when like a huge player is up for judiciary in that kind of period where they might miss a finals game, I don't know if I've had my eyes on the judiciary this much as I did yesterday. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The Discord has been absolutely popping off. The subscribers have been putting in updates by the minute on the Ryan Couchman live verdict. Of course, we've got news of that now, and we'll talk about that very soon. But you are watching Buy, Hold, Sell. We're going to give you we're going to go through and give you our opinions on the top 10 most purchased players in round 4 and the top 10 most sold. Of course, there are some interesting names in here. There are some names that are definitely being spoken about for the first time, although they probably shouldn't be. So, stick with us for that. Guys, if you haven't joined yet, make sure you join the league code. We'll be cutting this off from the end of next round. Round 5, we'll close this one off. So make sure to get in quick. 768-857 is that code for the audio listeners there. You can win a standard squeeze prize pack if you're the top scorer. You can also win $500 if you take out this league. And if you are a subscriber, we'll double that cash to $1,000. So make sure to sign up. You can join the Patreon and become a subscriber. The link is in the description below to get involved. Less than $12 a month to get weekly Q&As, exclusive articles, and you get your own exclusive show as a subscriber this year. Weekly teams, our trades, our moves, our captaincy, all of those things. You get to ask us any questions, and you get access to all of the Discord premium channels in there as well, with all the news that you need to smash SuperCoach in 2026. Let's move in, mate, and we'll start off with the most purchased player. The man coming off 128 last week. I bet you didn't think you'd be talking about Joe Chan as the most purchased player in round 4.
Yeah, look, I got it wrong. He ran some great lines last week. I didn't pick Jordan Ricky for a double, nor did I pick Joey Chan for a double, but alas, here we are. It does seem to be some money to be made. He is on that lethal hip of Jerome Hughes. Jerome Hughes, of course, had a masterclass last week, and that was all in a loss. Coming up against the North Queensland Cowboys, not only is it a great matchup, but he's got a negative 37 break even. Looks like there could still be at least 100K, maybe 150K to be made out of him. As long as a guy is playing 80 minutes for the Storm, and Storm, I'm still going to go out there and say that they look like the second best team in the comp after winning a game last week. So after losing a game last week, they're still a class above whoever's third. Look, as long as Joey Chan's playing for the Melbourne Storm next to Jerome Hughes, he looked unreal, didn't he?
So good, yeah. I was happy to own him and play him on field. So that was I feel like a bit of a win after a pretty slow start for my team. So I think that's probably the difference between mine and your score. I think you might still have your NBA score and your NBA rank up there, but looking at the Crown and the Clown, there's about 100 points between it, and it's pretty much Joe Chan is the differential there in that team. So, look, I can't blame anybody for going and getting him. I think if for anybody who wants to know the numbers, obviously that 128's still got a couple of weeks to stay in his rolling average, so there is money to be made in the next fortnight at least. If he goes and churns out 50, 50, 50 over the next 3 weeks, he'll make you another 120 to 130K. So, I mean, look, yeah, it's probably worth a trade if you're a Ryan Couchman trader this week, and we'll talk about him later. Ryan Couchman to Joe Chan for probably, 150K, less than 150K. Isn't a bad little pivot move there, and you might be able to get Couchman back a little bit later. But, feels a bit gross buying Joe Chan for 440K, but I think you got to, really, like in this position. You mentioned it, outside Hughes. It's a nice place to be, and not a team I want to go against either.
Name aside, if you tell me that you've got the, the right second rower sitting there for the Melbourne Storm, and he's 400K coming off 138 or whatever he was, then you've got to get him.
Absolutely.
It's just gross.
Jaxon forward, second most purchased. Again, been on an absolute tear as of late. He's in at 670K, Jaxon Ford. Comes up against the West Tigers this week, which is a great little matchup for them. I think he runs a great line, and he plays a bit like a second rower. Obviously, he's played on the edge for a fair amount of his career as well. So, Yeah, I do like this matchup for him. Only 13.5% owned overall as well. Nearly 10% of people are bringing him in. Over 15,000 coaches have seen enough. -7 break even, I think, is also really nice as a nice little top up of cash. I think there's every chance he probably could go and make you 100K from here. So looking at Jackson Ford getting up kind of close to that 800 mark just doesn't feel real, but there's every chance he probably could get there at least before he does come back down. And if he can keep this form up, he'll be the front row forward one, which tells me he probably can't. But at the same time, there's nothing telling me at the moment he can't be a 75 average guy this year if he can keep it up.
I mean, like front row forward 2 is definitely in his sights. Payne Haas, niggling injury, could have a bit of impact to him coming back. New Zealand Warriors, I would say they've probably been the third best team out there. New Zealand Warriors look unreal, only with Luke Metcalf to come back this week as well. Look, they're going to be better and better. So yeah, I am stoked to bring in a Jackson Ford and against the West Tigers as well. Not that I have anything against the Tigers pack. I think they're a little bit better than they've been in other years. Jackson Ford, you've got to look at that negative break even and him being that deer and just think, he's been on an absolute tear. 96.7 average.
Weapon. 68 in round 1 as well, coming off 102 and 120. So again, that's with tries scored. So you got to temper your expectations there somewhat, but you're probably looking at 70 as a floor really in BP. So yeah, and for everybody who now we're not going to see Payne Haas in the most sold players on tonight's episode, but that may change. Obviously, with Payne Haas being ruled out as of this afternoon when we're recording this on Tuesday night at nearly 8 o'clock. So there could be some Haas to Jackson Ford trades. And look, I can't really talk anybody out of that. Thomas Jenkins, though, I can probably try and talk you out of Thomas Jenkins. And, 14 break even, 697K is probably the thing that's deterring me the most. Buying Thomas Jenkins for 700K. He does come up against the Eels, and it's a great matchup this week. But then the Penrith Panthers still have a couple of tricky matchups coming up as well. They've got the Storm into the Bulldogs the next fortnight after that. And tell me, are you buying a 700K asset to sit them potentially against the Storm and the Dogs? Because I don't love either of those matchups. Two very good defensive teams. It's a pass for me. I think people have been maybe kind of brought into chasing points from last week or the week before. He's been great, don't get me wrong, but yeah, not at the price point. Talk to me if he's sub 600K, but I'm not buying him at 700.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't talking about him at sub 600K and he'd been on a tear. He's just had 3 tremendous weeks. And they seem to be naturally heading that side over Brian To'o's side. I think he scored a 40 odd with an unbelievable try there as well. But the Parramatta is a good matchup. But yeah, you're not sitting them and starting to sit these guys like when you look at your Leos and your 2s or whatever. If I spend 600K for a guy, he better have a floor of 55, 60.
Yeah, obviously 4 tries last week. The attack is there for sure, but the base really isn't. For the most part anyway. Like, he'll get his work out of his own end, but that's pretty much it, unless he finds some attack. So if there's a team you can find attack on, it's the Penrith Panthers, but at the same time, 700K, 700K. Speaking of the next guy as well, Tanner Boyd, 700K. We made our thoughts known last week, and we can probably... Josh and I, so you don't have to be painted with that brush, but I'm sure you would have been anyway. I feel like a Tanner Boyd at 700K sits in the same kind of category. As great as he's been, having a goal-kicking half, unless you think Tanner Boyd is like Andrew Johns reincarnate and you feel like he's going to be the halfback one this year, I think you're buying Tanner Boyd at overs right now. He's got a 17 break-even coming into this week and a couple of nice scores in his rolling average, so that should stay relatively low, but tell me you're buying like a Nathan Cleary against the Eels if you don't have him at 800K versus Tanner Boyd at 700K. I think people would be more than happy to go and, unless you're getting both, in that case, I'd probably prefer Nico, but spend an extra 100K and get Nathan Cleary. Spend an extra, oh God, what's Nico's price? Because I reckon it'd be pretty bloody close to 700K now.
Yeah, it'd be 720 or something like that, so...
Same price we're talking about here with those guys, and the pedigree is there. And Tanner Boyd, as much as I love what he's been doing, he's been outstanding. He's been very, very good. But can he keep it up? I hope maybe I'll be proven wrong, and if I am proven wrong, I'll happily own that. But I think we're going to see a bit of a regression, somewhat.
Yeah, and it's not only with Tana Boyd's play where I think there's going to be a regression. Genuinely, Luke Metcalf's coming back in, and he was the chief playmaker last year. So of course there's going to be some form of regression or some form of job sharing when it comes to being that prime, runner. And I actually like Luke Metcalf as a 5'8". I'm completely fine with him there at 5'8", and Tana Boyd in there. I think that this is their best side with these two guys in there. But Tana Boyd's going to lose it a little bit. And yeah, I mean, like Luke Metcalf was goal kicking too, if I remember correctly. He might even lose the goal kicking this week. I don't know. There's been no confirmation around that. Tana Boyd's been unreal. But now that there was question marks before, like he's only scored 290s ever. There's even more question marks this week, and that's enough for me to draw a line through taking a risk on a 700K halfback. If he was 400K, if he'd started at 230K and he was 400K and he'd been ripping this up, absolutely. Maybe even 500K. And I could use the 300K between Cleary and him elsewhere, I'd do it. But right now, 100K between him and Cleary, 40K between him and Nico. Look, I'm going with the proven guns.
Tell me you're not. I mean, of course, you're excited with the Wars at home at Go Media against the Tigers, but you're then going to the Sharks and to Melbourne. You've got 2 away games against 2 very good teams. Yeah, not for me. Arama Ho, minus 17 break even. Of course, now he's probably going to be my front row forward 2 this week. If that gives anybody,
he might be my front row forward 1.
Honestly, we may see that in some teams. But look, he's been great. He's averaging 58 on the season. I can't fault him. It's the Josh Patson on the bench last week. He didn't get a run, of course, but yeah, there's a little bit of risk there floating around maybe now. But I think he's been good enough to hold on to what he's been doing. It's, of course, the Titans have just been poor, so there's always a risk that the young guys get shuffled a bit around or kind of made as the scapegoat when things aren't going right. But at the same time, I'm minus 17 break even. There's still money to be made. He's still an 80-minute edge back rower at this point in time. It's just the buyer beware on the Josh Patson sitting on the bench. That's the only concern for me. Otherwise, wheels up.
Yeah, if I wasn't sitting in the middle of my SuperCoach team watching the fire around me, maybe I would be not playing Araho. But yeah, completely fine to play Araho in a pinch. Any guy averaging 58, I'm absolutely stoked. I would be stoked with him if he was averaging 45 and playing him as my front row forward 1 this week with the carnage that we've had. Of course, I am referencing your Payne Haas and your Trey Mooney, who was my front row forward 1 and 2, and I'm sure many of listeners, they had that. Araho, yeah, absolutely fantastic sitting there. Playing in a pinch and confident. I probably would be confident to play him other weeks as well with what I've seen.
Yeah, 100%. Let's move on to Stefano Utuikamanu, 27 break even. He's been immense as well for the Melbourne Storm. He's being purchased by a bit over 4,000 super coaches. Obviously coming up against the Cowboys, into the Panthers and Warriors over the next 3 weeks. And he's shown us with his scoring so far, going 65, 81 and 71. Obviously, very minimal attack in that as well. Tackle breaks have been fantastic. We only see 1 line break and everything else has been in BP. So really impressive numbers there. And that line break was in the game where he scored 65 against the Eels too. So you take that 10 off, he's gone 55, 81 and 71 in BP over the last to start the season. And the minutes have looked quite impressive as well, playing 55 plus minutes in nearly, I think, each game that he played. So yeah, loving it. Absolutely loving what I've seen. 50, 60 and 61 minutes over.
You sound like a Macca's ad, man.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Because genuinely, like, if you don't have the money to get to Jaxon Ford, I think Stefano could be the plug and play that you need.
That could be me, and it's only out of necessity, but I don't think you're losing that much. I tell the story that in the Discord the other day when I missed the end of the game, or like I was just watching the game somewhere where I wasn't listening to the commentary, I was like, oh, did Stefano score a try? No, he's just been that good in base. Yeah, he's honestly, the worst thing about all of this is he could be playing Origin. That's probably the worst part about it all. But look, when Storm's by round 11, because I'm starting to accumulate a lot of Storm players, and that's probably as somebody that doesn't have any WARS players and is sitting here on quite a bit of money, that's probably the difference between Ford and Stefano. It's not even the money thing. It's just that by the time you go have Leo, Fa'alongo, if you've got a Munster, if you're running Harry Grant, you start to add Stefano. We start to get in this same problem that people are in at the moment with the bunnies. And we have too many.
Yeah, round 15 is the bye, same as the cows. So you've got a bit more
cool.
time than you think. But at the same time, I think it's so far away that you can do a lot of damage in that time period without worrying about the bye then. So yeah, I think we'll cross that bridge a little bit later when we come to it. Reese Walsh is number 7, which I'm kind of surprised he's as low as 7. Obviously comes up against the Dolphins in the Brisbane Derby this week. So there's going to be plenty to play for.
They're calling it on TV.
Battle of Brisbane, like it. Prefer the Derby, but yeah, 83 break even maybe is the deterrent, is the break even for a lot of maybe more casual players. Looking at making money still this early in the season, I completely understand it, but at the same time, I've got to look at the matchups for the Broncos moving forward as well. And let's just take the Adam Reynolds conversation out of the picture for a second. They come up against the Dolphins, where last game in round 24 last year, he scored 155. And then he comes up against the Gold Coast Titans, who have been a hot mess so far this season, into the North Queensland Cowboys, where in round 26 last year, he scored 161. So this next 3-week period, and then into the Tigers at Campbelltown Stadium, and I'll probably be there to watch him absolutely massacre us. I tell you what, this next month could literally set up your not set up your season. It's too early and too short of a period to do that. But I tell you what, he could put you in the top 1,000 in a really good spot after round 7.
Man, I think you've got to really consider ceilings when you think about your trades this week, and maybe foregoing a Jaxon forward, who I consider to be an elite trade-in, or when you consider bringing in some of these other forwards that we've all chatted about earlier that are great trade-ins, when you could have a genuine captain option. I looked at, my ranks dropped a little bit. I think I've dropped to 7,000, but I went all the way from, 25,000th to 6,000th in one Fa'alongo captaincy. I think Reese Walsh could be that guy for punters this week.
I think the one thing people will be a bit, worried about is Adam Reynolds. And, we know that Reese Walsh averages significantly less without Adam Reynolds in the team. Obviously, Reynolds kind of takes away that extra couple of touches a set that he gets normally. But in saying that, there's every chance he might still goal kick. We've seen, obviously, Scott Drinkwater pass on the goal kicking for the exact same injury. And Reese Walsh is a very good goal kicker, so there's no reason for them to risk Reynolds this early in the season, making him kind of re-aggravate or giving me a chance to re-aggravate that by goal kicking, which apparently with rotation, based on physio, is a little bit of risk there for a bit of extra additional pain. So, yeah, something to keep an eye on, but I'm very intrigued by Reese Walsh, and I think if you're looking for a high upside VC this week, he is your guy. Nathan Cleary, goes without saying. I think if you don't have him, and I said it last week, I'll say it again, even coming off the 60-odd, where he really didn't do that much. 69 last week he has an 81 break even this week, and I don't care. I think that this week against the Eels is the week you need to own him, and I think a Reese Walsh VC into a Nathan Cleary captain this week could be exactly what you need from a ceiling perspective. I think you'd be silly not to consider both.
Oh, imagine you're a mad punter and you're going vice captain Reese Walsh into Fa'alongo this week. When you look at the Dolphins and the Cowboys and how ordinary some of these Queensland teams, the Broncos included, have been. Man, it's scary ceilings. But Cleary is a season hold. I think I'll be holding him through that period and just relying on some of these cheaper guys at certain times. If you don't have him, don't be scared off by that 81 break even. He gets that on his dick. So.
Yeah, he'll do that in the first half against the Eels, potentially, if they put a score on. It's at CommBank as well. There's usually points scored at CommBank. So, for me, definitely, I'm thankful I bought him last week. I'm happy because I did see this matchup obviously coming. So, people probably using trades to make sure that they correct that this week. Jaxon Purdue, do you feel like this is chasing last week points, or do you think this is he's probably the standout in this Cowboys team, aside from Drinky, who was good in patches last week and starting to get better and better? Jaxon Purdue, every time he touches the ball, looks electric.
Yeah, he does. I just think...
I know exactly what this trade is too. It's a Cody Walker on the buy trade to Jaxon Purdue.
Oh, trust me. I've considered it as somebody sitting here holding Cody Walker. But I do think, much like the decisions between like a Tana Boyd to a Nathan Cleary, we've got a much smaller sample size, much the same as Jaxon Purdue on a shit team. wouldn't you just rather go to a Cameron Munster for 100K more? And that's my only question to Jaxon Purdue owners, because it doesn't matter if you're making 100K, you're probably trading Jaxon Purdue in, trying to make some cash only to get Cody Walker. So, Cody Walker, I've been brainwashed. A Cam Munster. So, yeah, it's just, if your plan is to get him in and hold him because you think he's an elite talent, absolutely. If your plan is to get him out as a stepping stone to someone else, he's too dear to worry about things like that.
And Cowboys players in general over the next 6 weeks only have 2 favourable matchups. And when we call a matchup favourable, we're talking about the Dragons and Manly, who, look, at the same time, you know, the Cowboys could lose they could go 0-6 over the next 6 weeks, realistically. They've got the Storm at home, they've got the Dragons away, they've got the Broncos at Suncorp, they've got Manly at home, then they've got the Sharks into the Dogs in 8 and 9. So it's not an easy run. We talked about the first 3 weeks draw for the Cowboys, first 4 out of 5 weeks, including the Dragons. They had the Titans, Tigers, and Newcastle Knights. We've missed the best part of the Cowboys' assets, I think, moving forward. So, yeah, not for me, Jackson Ford. Hamasi Macasini, of course, negative 37 break even. I think people probably just waiting to make sure that he had that spot locked down. And whilst he is he's at right centre because of the Taylor May injury, at the same time, last week he had a Barry Crocker of a start and still scored like 65. That, for me, is good enough to show me that I can maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself.
Yeah,
I can play
him.
I can comfortably play him every single week, and I know that he will find probably 50 as a floor. What we saw from him in round 2 is probably what we'll see from him moving forward, I think. So, yeah, definitely a trade if you didn't start with Hamasi Macasini.
Yep. You made a mistake in not starting, or you were planning to get him in this round if he planned out. Just activate that trade.
100%. Let's move on to the sells. All right, we got Trey Mooney right at the top of the list here. Trey Mooney misses 1 week for suspension. Of course, 56 break even, and Josh did the stats for us the other day talking about if he goes and scores a 55, I think it is, or 50 over the next 3 weeks, he makes you about 40K, but he's not a mass cash generator at this point in time. But in saying that, I think he is still a more than playable front row forward 2/3. For me, he's my front row forward 3, and I'm more than happy to hold him for a week, knowing that I can probably play him on a pinch whenever I need.
Yeah, look, he's not the biggest fire that I need to put out, so that's probably why I'm holding him. And I've always kind of been okay with playing just a 500K guy. Yeah, look, I mean, like maybe it's a little sideways, a Trey Mooney to a Stefano or somebody like that. But yeah, for right now, if you really need the play and the money this week, and what you're doing with that money is bringing in an elite captain option like a Reese Walsh or somebody like that, that's when I can get around the trade for Trey Mooney.
Yeah. Well, 1 week, if you can sit on it, I'd be sitting on it and just saving that trade. But yeah, if you're in dire straits and you need to do a Trey Mooney to a Stefano, then look, I get it. I would rather trade Trey Mooney out than Payne Haas. Jermaine Hopgood, sadly, his season is over after that hip drop tackle from Ryan Couchman. We'll talk about him soon. But SuperCoach Guns put up a post, actually. This isn't really relevant to the sell, but next year, obviously Tino only played 2 games, did his ACL, season was over. He got a 30% discount on his price. And I think Guns did the stats that if Jermaine Hopgood obviously comes in and gets that 30% discount off the back of his poor season already from last year, he'll come in priced at like 370K to start 2027. So, that's intriguing. You got to feel for the bloke, though. Tough injury. It's going to be a shit rehab. Hopefully he can come back bigger and better next year.
Yeah, it was supposed to be his year. Unfortunately not. We'll do it again next year.
Yeah. Cody Walker on the bye. People are just bailing because they probably need a playable 5'8" and don't want to rely on Jonah Pezzett, which, look, let's be honest. Cody Walker owners knew that this week was coming, and I'm sure that you, as a Cody Walker owner, were prepared for this week, knowing that you probably have to pay Jonah Pezzett as 5'8", as your 5'8" just for this week. I don't know whether I'd go and trade Cody Walker out, though. Are you concerned with the back-to-back 30s and the 70 break-even, or you knew that this was part of the deal?
Oh, yeah, I knew part of the deal. You and Josh always say about me that I'll chase the hundreds and, you got to live with the 34s. That's real life, and that's what I expected with Cody Walker. I do still think that he is a play in really good matchups. The hard thing is when is a good matchup for Cody Walker, because I think it could just be rolling the dice every time. But I'm going to live with that because I knew what I was getting myself into. And my team is great in other spots because I have, a 300K cheaper Cody Walker than a Cam Munster. So
Yeah, that's fair. Toby Couchman, out with HIA this week, so he'll be an 11-day stand down, not finishing the game. 96 break even as well. He's had a bit of a rough start to the season. He looked pretty good before he went down with that HIA last week too. So, yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about Toby Couchman? I'm a bit indifferent to him. 562K now. He's lost a bit of cash. He's got a big break even in his rolling average. I'm okay with selling if you need the number, but he'll be back next week. So it's more a matter of, do you believe that he's regressing somewhat with the role that he has or minutes that he has?
Genuinely, I'm not 100% sure his role is what I thought at the start, but I do think that he would not feature in this top 10 if not for the HIA. There's been some absolute disasters. You're probably trading out a Toby Couchman for a Stefano or a Jaxon Ford, and you've got a negative or an extremely low break even. If you're playing cash and you think that that's worth the trade and that gets you a good team this week, that's when I can get around this.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that there's nothing really attaching me to Toby Couchman. He hasn't shown me enough. If I was an owner, I'd be pretty frustrated. At the same time, it is a HIA, so I think if he gets you to a number and he gets you to a player like a Jaxon Ford or a sideways to Stefano and gets you another number that strengthens your team this week in pretty chaotic week where a lot of players have gone down, I can get around that. That's fine. Reed Mahoney's an interesting one because obviously he's a warm body this week and people need those, but at the same time we're probably just sick of the, let's call it the midness. I could have used a worse word. So he's been average.
Just say
he's been average. And the minutes, obviously, he's been spelled by Sonny Luke a couple of times. He played 80 in week 1, and that's pretty much it. And even when he played 80, I think he got 50. So it's like we got what we paid for, and that's pretty much it. We're hoping for a lot more from Reed Mahoney. So if you can get up to a Blake Brayley or correct the trade with Harry Grant or whatever it be, then I'd be getting there ASAP. Is there anybody else you'd look at, though, at hooker too, or you're just going like Harry Grant or Blake Brayley?
I kind of like Robson as well. I do think that if you're doing other things with your money, it's a nice little 80K up to Robson. I have seen some people duck down to Cheese and using that money elsewhere. I'm too scared to do that this early on in the season when you don't even know what the role's looking like. Rabbitohs have been pretty good, and they said Brandon Smith was the number one guy. But yeah, the other guys have been completely fine. He might have to come back through Reggie's and everything like that anyway. It's Robson, it's Harry Grant, or it's Blake Brayley. I hate the thought of going double gun hooker, but yeah, it might be the year for it.
I mean, Brayley's coming off a 90 last week, so I don't expect him to do that every week. But at the same time, he had a cracker of a year last year, so I can't talk people out of getting Blake Brayley either and just locking away hooker to start the season anyway. The one thing I guess to probably keep in mind with Reed Mahoney is the fact that you can wait a couple of weeks. I think Josh did for subscribers and talked about it on Sunday night as well. You can wait. Obviously, Reese Robson's got another game before he ends up rising in cash, but they also have the bye next week. So you can sit on Mahoney for a couple of weeks. You can get one look at Brandon Smith as well before he comes back or as he comes back. And then you can decide what you want to do with Reed Mahoney, whether you want to trade down to Brandon Smith or whether you want to trade up to Reese Robson before he increases in price. So if you want to be patient with Reed Mahoney, I'd probably recommend it because then you'll have a lot more information to decide whether you want to go to Robson or to Cheese. Sam Walker, I traded last week. I'm very, very happy after watching the game that I did because he had a shocking game. Of course, great player, so I don't expect him to have 2 shockers in a row. But at the same time, they're coming into the bye next week too, right? So they're playing Manly this week, and they could put up a score this week, and they probably need to, based on how they've played so far this year. But yeah, Manly into the bye, I'd be moving on from him. I assume that people either have him at flex, and you can go to nearly anyone, or you don't have Nathan Cleary, and it's probably the easiest trade you'll ever make.
Yeah, I've had some people say, "Oh, I'm holding on to him for Manly. They're the worst team in the comp." They're not. There's probably 2 worse ones up here in Queensland. And secondly, yeah, just rolling into that buy as well, where you're going to get a 0 from him. I think I would even rather go Sam Walker to Tana Boyd than than hold on to Sam Walker at the moment. I reckon he's a talent, but his game has dropped the most probably from the updates in SuperCoach this season. So just admit you got it wrong and move him on.
I think you're right. Sadly. Atavalu Lisati, he will be missing 4 weeks with this calf injury. So, yeah, negative 79 break even. It always sucks to have to trade or move on a guy that has that much money coming back. It looks like, and Craig Bellamy was talking the other week about his back rowers and never mentioned anything about Sean Bloor. So that's positive for Lisati. At the same time, it's like, how long do you really want to sit on a player, especially if you've now got a Ryan Couchman who's going to miss the same amount of time that we'll talk about soon. You got so much money tied up in both of their, or not so much money, but so much potential cash generation tied up in these two guys. Are you trading both, or are you holding one? Are you holding both? Which one are you moving on? How are you playing this Lisati and Couchman situation?
Look, I'm holding one, and how am I going to say this? If I didn't trade Lisati last week, I would be holding one of them. I think one's fine to have dead riding on your bench. So many people have enough sitting on their bench anyway. I don't. I think if you had enough and one of these guys, it could be of a little bit of concern when it comes to buys and everything like that. I had 2 Cowboys back rowers, so that sucked a bit for me. But yeah, I just think that you can hold one of them. And if I'd held Lisati onto it for another week, it'd be 1 week to them, 1 more week till them coming back. I'd probably trade Couchman instead of Lisati this week. So I'm a bit surprised by that. But also, we've only just got the news. We're recording this a night early. So yeah, I think that will correct itself in the upcoming days.
100%. I think people were just holding out on the Couchman trade to work out what they were doing. And again, people were thinking 6 weeks. It's only 4 weeks. So we'll have a chat about him now, I guess, and skip Tom Flegler. We'll come back to him.
We need to.
I'm okay with, if you don't have Lisati, I'm okay with holding Couchman for 4 weeks. 6 weeks would have stretched it for me. I would have been able to make too much money in that time, but there's no one really putting their hand up around that cheapie price point that I could go sideways to. So I'd need to use some of my bank to get up to a playable player or a gun or a mid, maybe a Helam Lukey or someone if I didn't have him. That's the pathway that I could probably see myself going. But at the same time, I'm pretty happy with what my 2RF looks like. I've got all the cash generators. I didn't get caught with Lisati, so that kind of helped. I'll be probably sitting on Couchman for the next 4 weeks. What are you doing? How are you playing it?
I'm sitting on Couchman, but to put it into perspective, I traded out Lisati the week before to Helam Lukey. I'm still happy with my trade, and that's really funny that you said it would be going at Couchman to a Lukey. I just got onto it a week before. I'm cool with holding the one player there. If I was to trade Couchman as a exactly what Brano said, he obviously goes to players that he doesn't have in Helam Lukey. For me, it's a pretty easy trade up for 100K, Ryan Couchman to Joey Chan, when we've all got money in the bank. So that's probably the most acceptable trade, I think, because it's just going to keep that cash generation going. And with a negative 21 break even, you can probably let him go back to the keeper. There's always been concerned about his minutes, and that probably stopped a lot of people getting him last week. Those same concerns are going to be there in 4 weeks, I would say, as well, especially if St. George can win some games.
Yeah, and they've got a nice draw too, don't they? So they put a few wins together. It might be a little bit harder for him, or maybe the minutes might be a little bit harder to come by. At the same time, though, he was so bloody good for them. He was probably their best middle forward through that first 3 rounds. So I'm pretty confident that he'll come back into a very similar role. When you're starting Blake Laurie, and I was going to say no offense to Blake Laurie, maybe it is, because I don't think he's a. I don't think it's an optimal option to have Blake Laurie even on your bench, let alone as a starting prop. So they'll need Couchman back ASAP. He was too big for them, I think, when he was down. So yeah, I'm holding. Tom Flegler, he's back and he's named on the bench this week, but of course he's still managing that rib issue. So rib cartilage, of course, for middle forwards, you see I think a 28% decrease in output based on historical data. So if I didn't last week, I'd be bailing now, and I'd probably try and get to somebody that I'd feel comfortable enough playing, because I'm not sure I feel comfortable playing Flegler coming off that injury.
Yeah, he's a warm body, but yeah, look, you got it wrong. Let's move on. There seems to be so many front row forwards that you can go to, like your Stefanos, your forwards that we've spoke about. So yeah, if you have the cash to get to one of those guys, absolutely.
And Mitchell Moses, last man on the list here. He is the 10th most traded out player, 54 break even. People have obviously been quite harsh when it comes to Mitchell Moses. He's coming up against the Penrith Panthers this week, and I understand why people are going, nah, don't want a piece of that. He played the Melbourne Storm, the Brisbane Broncos in the first 2 rounds. Now, of course, we weren't expecting him to do amazingly against those teams. He scored 50 against the Dragons, and people are probably like, oh, well, I held him for those first 3 rounds because that Dragons matchup was so good, and he got 50. The Eels have also not been fantastic, aside from knocking off the Broncos in round 2. I see them conceding a fair few points against the Panthers as well. I think they're going to struggle. So I think the trade's fine. The one thing you want to do is look behind your leg, or maybe hide and don't watch the games at CommBank Stadium against the Tigers into the Gold Coast Titans in round 5 and 6.
No, I agree. He's just been mid. And would he be okay to hold? Yeah, he probably would be. But so many other guys in his position are putting their hand up. It is that high upside position. I would just be going there.
I agree. That is the most bought and sold players, our opinions, where we're headed. And of course, there are a lot of different moves that you could make this week ahead of round 4. You know, injuries, chaos, suspensions, and a lot of unexpected ones coming our way as well. No less than Payne Haas, of course, only as recent as about 4 hours ago from recording this podcast, that he is not being named, of course, this week, battling that AC joint injury. So, yeah, keep an eye out for the rest of the shows this week. I'm sure we'll dive into them in depth. But that's Buy, Hold, Sell, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, we've got captains coming up as well. If you want to become a Patreon subscriber, you'll get your Patreon exclusive show coming to you tomorrow night inside the Patreon and the Discord. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that. Hit the thumbs up to support the show. We would appreciate that. Hit the subscribe so you don't miss any future shows. And we will see you for Captain's Corner tomorrow. Catch you then.
Cheerio.